think it's 9 o'clock London time, so we will start our event. So thanks once again to everybody for attending our week 3 events in our 8th Stirling annual translation studies event. And our first or the 5th event of the speaker is Professor Jun PAN, and it's our great pleasure to have her here. As I just mentioned, she's the youngest speaker we had for this series of talk. It's been our great pleasure to have her here. So now I'll just briefly introduce her before she starts to give the talk. Dr. Jun PAN is Associate Professor in the Department of Translation and Interpreting Studies at Hong Kong Baptist University. She works as managing editor of Bandung Journal of Global South and review editor of the Interpreters and Translator Trainer. Her research interests include digital humanities, interpreting translation studies, corpus-based interpreting and translation studies, professionalism in interpreting, learners' factors in interpreters training, so biometric studies, etc. Her most recent work include the construction and publication of the Chinese English political interpreting corpus, and that is the main topic of her talk today. So the title of her talk is Moving Forward in Corpus-based Interpreting Studies, Challenges and Explorations and Prospects. So once again, thanks to Professor Jun PAN for delivering the talk at Stirling. So now the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Li. So can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for this very nice introduction, and it has been a great pleasure and honor to join this talk series. I appreciate very much this opportunity to join the discussion on corpus-based interpreting studies and also a review of the past and future of this very burgeoning discipline. So as you can see, here's the title of the presentation. I'm going to cover the talk from 3 perspectives. I'm going to provide a review of the past and present of CIS. After that, I'm going to discuss the ways for us to move forward in this subdiscipline. At the end of the talk, I will provide one of the alternatives for our future, that is interpreting data mining. So I hope that we will have enough time for discussion at the end of the talk, because I really look forward to listen to your feedback and also to invite you to share your opinion and view on the future of discipline, of this very, very interesting and young discipline as well. To start with, when we talk about corpus-based interpreting studies, we have to discuss what is a corpus. And here I cite Weike and Pearson on their definition of a corpus, which includes 3 very important, I think, criteria of data selection. So it includes authentic texts, electronic form, and also a specific set of criteria. I apologize for the thunderstorm here, because we are having a storm here in Hong Kong. So if you hear the backdrop sound of this thunderstorm, is actually what's happening here. Authentic, yeah. So I'm going to use those 3 criteria to describe what is an interpreting corpus in this case. So authentic texts. When we talk about an interpreting corpus, authentic texts can include audios, videos, or transcriptions of those audios and videos. And also we can talk about prior interpreting translations collected before the interpreting tasks. An interpreting corpus can be put into electronic form. Basically, we can talk about a Word form, Excel, PDF, TXT, or XML format of interpreting corporate data. The third criteria, a specific set of criteria. When we talk about the construction of an interpreting corpus, we need to consider first of all what to include. Do we want the corpus to be monomodal, bimodal, or multimodal? What kind of transcription rules do we want to employ? What kind of annotation schemes do we want to put on to add some extra value to the data itself? So those are the questions that we have to think about and also consider before we construct any kind of interpreting corpus. When we talk about the subdiscipline of corpus-based interpreting studies, a very, very important milestone study should not be neglected. That is the paper by Schlesinger back in 1998. The title of the paper was Corpus-based Interpreting Studies as an Offshoot of Corpus-based Translation Studies. So it may be considered as a declaration of this independence of corpus-based interpreting studies as a subdiscipline. There are a couple of milestone studies that we should focus on when we look at the history of this subdiscipline. To start with, one of the early publications that carried the name of CIS is Breaking Ground in Corpus-based Interpreting Studies, published back in 2012. After that, 6 years later, we have another milestone study, Making Way in Corpus-based Interpreting Studies, published in 2018 by Springer. So those studies help to summarize the status quo of the field and also pointed out the future directions of this subdiscipline. Interestingly, when we look at the publications relevant to corpus-based interpreting studies, we find that actually there are a lot of more publications relevant to this subdiscipline in the after 2010. So here is a diagram produced by Google Books Ngram Viewer. And if we check the keyword corpus-based interpreting studies, we find the publications increased starting from 1998 until now. We have more and more publications. So apart from the publications, what is exactly the status quo of the field? Back in 2011, Robin Saturn described the discipline as a cottage industry. So what is a cottage industry? Here I listed some pictures which can help you to understand the features of a cottage industry. And if we check the features of a cottage industry, we can find the keywords such as producers working from home and putting out system. So what is a putting out system? The putting out system refers to subcontracting work, and it is also a workshop system or domestic system. Again, the keywords include homes, workshops, and craftsmen. So those are the key features of a cottage industry, which may be very relevant to what happened back in 2010 in the discipline of corpus-based interpreting studies itself. So what happened later after that very important study of Robin Saturn? Li, in the previous publication I mentioned, Making Way in Corpus-based Interpreting Studies, mentioned that currently CIS is a wild cottage industry, and wild in the bracket, which means that is semi-wild to a certain extent. So what does it mean? Wild includes many different types of definitions. The most relevant ones here are listed and also highlighted in red, which can refer to a telecommunications network and especially to the internet or a connection to the internet. So basically internet related. And if we look back into the publication, Making Way in Corpus-based Interpreting Studies, we find that there are actually many corpora mentioned in the book. Here I provided a list of all of the corpora mentioned in that book. And they're classified according what we call the metadata of corpus-based interpreting studies, perhaps interpreting mode, setting, language combination, country or region of the event, year span, corpus size, etc. As highlighted, we can see most of the corpora are European-centered. The good news is that most of the corpus are relevant to the epic, and this indicates a certain kind of wild community in the European society as far as corpus-based interpreting studies is concerned. As far as the size is concerned, we see, again, because of the difficulties of transcription and many other obstacles to the development of interpreting corpora, most of the corpora have very limited size. The biggest one included in the book were actually, as highlighted in those two, we have over 360,000 and also 150 minutes, I think, yeah, of the corpus size. And as far as wild, another feature of wild is concerned, we see the two of the corpora mentioned in the book are accessible online. So what is to happen next, and what has happened till that stage? Again, back to the book, and Dr Saihong Li summarized that the largest interpreting corpus back then was up to 1 million, and it's the simultaneous interpreting database, but the corpus is not accessible, which means that it's not connected to internet back then. And also, Dr Saihong Li predicted that if CIS projects are the responsibility of individual researchers, which means that the researchers, if they're not collaborating, if they're not wired up as a community, it's unlikely that very large corpora can become available in the near future. So basically, he called for the collaboration among CIS researchers to work on construction of bigger size corpora in the future. So we just briefly looked at the past and present of corpus-based interpreting studies. Now it's time for us to look at how to move forward in this certain discipline. So if we look at the development from cottage industry, from industrial perspective, the next step is probably what we would call the pro-industrialization. And the key feature of proto-industrialization is relevant to what we call external markets, which means that corpus-based interpreting studies need to have an outlooking perspective in order to move forward. In a bibliometric review I performed together with my colleagues, we find that interpreting basically is interdisciplinary and outlooking at the same time. And among the publications that we reviewed, we found that most of them cover the interdisciplinary perspectives, including neuroscience, cognitive studies, linguistic perspective, sociological perspective, etc. So those are the possible perspectives that we can take into consideration when we want to move forward in this certain discipline. But there is another possibility that if we continue to look out from not just those disciplines, but also from other younger disciplines such as digital humanities, then we can learn much more. Luckily, with the help of Digital Humanities Grant, we developed the Chinese English Political Interpreting Corpus. And here is the web page of the corpus. You can actually scan the QR code on this PowerPoint slide so that you will be directed to the web page of the SEPIC, and then we can explore the corpus together. So as mentioned, the SEPIC was developed actually with the perspective of digital humanities instead of just corpus-based interpreting studies. So to a certain extent, it carries the mission of not only providing a record of the work of interpreting corpus, but also introducing interpreting to the outside world. So the design is slightly different from a traditional corpus in the field of interpreting studies. And the rationale for providing such a corpus is because we find very small number of open access interpreting corpora, as mentioned in the previous review. And this is actually due to the fact that interpreting data are very, very difficult to access. And spoken data transcription still poses difficulties in a lot of languages, especially Cantonese at the moment. Most importantly, if we develop in corpora, we know there's another term that is part of speech tagging. And although part speech tagging can be almost automatically done on written language, its application on spoken language is still very, very complicated and can create a lot of mistakes that need manual corrections. Apart from that, among the corpora that we have, sometimes people employ different annotation protocols, which makes it difficult to compare across different corpora data sets. So that is the reason why we hope to be able to contribute to this field by providing an open access interpreting corpus. We hope that the corpus can cover Chinese and English language political interpreting, which is not covered in the previous review, as far as open access corpora are concerned. We also hope that through this open access endeavor, we hope to be able to provide a possible solution to future collection of interpreting corpora with the provision of the following solutions, which include templates of metadata collection and also possible solutions to spoken data transcription and annotation. And if you have just scanned the QR code, you would be directed to this page, which is the actually the welcome page of the SEPIC. If you fail to scan the QR code, you can easily Google SEPIC HKBU, and then you will be able to find the website of the SEPIC. So the welcome page gives you a brief description of the project itself and also an introduction to the SEPIC data. As you can see, SEPIC is perhaps among the biggest interpreting corpora so far, and its size is 6.5 billion, and it's quite big in size. So this huge amount of work cannot be achieved without the help of a large group of research team. So here I'd like to express my appreciation to all my team members who contribute a lot to the construction of the corpus. And as you can see, actually we have weekly meetings among the project team to discuss the transcription rules and also the annotation scheme to make sure that everybody is working on the same page. And we divided people into different language groups so that we also need to compare and discuss among the different language groups to make that cross comparison among different language groups are possible within the SEPIC corpus. So it has taken quite a long time, to be honest. It took more than 5 years of work and also more than 20 people's contribution to be able to develop such a large data set of interpreting data. And the SEPIC website also gives you the basic statistics of the corpus itself. We include many Chinese and English. And under Chinese, we have the subcategories of Cantonese and Putonghua. So here you can see the numbers of words under each category. The SEPIC data basically included the reading of government reports, Q&A sessions, parliamentary debates, etc. So we have dialogue and the monologue. We also have consecutive interpreting and simultaneous interpreting. Apart from that, we included both C2E, Chinese to English, and English to Chinese interpreting data. As I mentioned, SEPIC was developed as a digital humanities project. So we need to help people to understand the key terms within the discipline of corpus-based interpreting studies and also interpreting. Therefore, we provided a glossary list, which can be shown on icons of info. And then if you click any of the terms on the search page, then you will be directed to the illustration of those terms in specific I hope, layman language to help people to understand, for example, what is delivery mode, what is consecutive interpreting, etc. And another very important feature of the SEPIC is that we have two major subcorpora. One is what we call raw, and the other one is what we call annotated. The raw data are basically written data or translations we collected from government websites and all the official transcripts provided by the government websites. But the annotated data is quite different because they included the speeches in a verbatim format, which means that it included all of the disfluencies, including repetitions and self-repeal, as well as fillers, such as pauses, or fillers such as n and er. And if you compare the raw data to the annotated data of Cantonese, Putonghua, or English, you get a feeling of what may be the differences in between those two. So basically, raw data may refer to the written language or translation. Annotated data may refer to interpreting or spoken data in the corpus. And here's another interface of the SEPIC search page. When you search a key term, then you will be directed to the concordance lines of the key term. And also you will have the collocations, and also you have the expanded context. And each of the segments have a parallel display of 6 different versions. We have Cantonese raw, Cantonese annotated, Putonghua raw, Putonghua annotated, English raw, and English annotated. And each of the text provides the links to the text and also the videos. So for those who are interested in the raw data, they can click the link and also find the raw data easily. Apart from that, we employed POS taggers on their SEPIC data. Actually, in a different presentation, we reported on how to employ a semi-automatic approach to the part of speech tagging of the SEPIC data. And this page actually gives you an idea of what kind of taggers that we employed on their both the written and spoken data. And this is the search platform of the SEPIC. Another feature is that after you have done the search, you can easily download your search result in an Excel format. So as I mentioned before, you can put in a keyword, for example, freedom, or if you start typing F, then many of the words will automatically appear starting with F for you to select from. And then those are the metadata that we included in the corpus construction, which are now searchable features that you can employ on your search results. You can choose a certain location. You can choose the speaker features, including the name of the speaker, the role of the speaker, the gender, or the language of the speaker. You can also choose delivery mode, such as dialogue or monologue, or all of them. You can also choose a specific gender of the interpreter. You can also choose the language of the interpreter or the mode of the interpreting. And also you can restrict your search results to a certain time frame. The results of the SEPIC search include 3 different features: keyword search, word collocation, and expanded keyword in context. Let's look at examples of each one of them. Keyword search. So if you're on the SEPIC website, you can choose the keyword interesting. And among the speaker rows, you can choose Member of Parliament UK, and also use the default time, that which is 1997 to 2017. And choose the subset annotated, and then you will be able to see the same results I have here, which listed 8 different cases of interesting. And you can see that 3 among the 8 cases of interesting are produced by Tyree Andrew, and that may be able to help you to understand certain speaker styles for those who are interested in politician speaking styles. The second function is word collocation. So if you have chosen interesting, and then in the second box, you will be able to see the top 20 color case of interesting based on this search. Another feature of this collocation diagram is that you will be able to choose another word together with interesting. For example, if you click point, then you will find all of the 20 color case of interesting point, which can give you some quite interesting results, I believe. Now, the third function, we do a different search now. Try to key in interesting and choose the location as Hong Kong, time span as default, and also choose the subset raw. Then you will have only 2 cases of interesting. And if you click the first one, then you will be brought to this interface. Sorry, this is the second one. Yeah, this is the second item of interesting. And then you will be brought to this page, and then you will be able to see interesting in 6 different language versions. And in the expanded context, you will be able to see when the data was produced, and who was the speaker, what was the language of the speaker, etc. All of the metadata information will be included here. And you can see among the raw data, we have Cantonese raw, Putonghua raw, and English raw. We have interesting. We have the English raw data that includes the paragraph of interesting. However, if we look at the corresponding Putonghua or Cantonese raw data, which were the official data collected by the government, we found that paragraph, the entire paragraph, was missing. So there's no paragraph relating to interesting at all in the Cantonese raw and Putonghua raw, especially in the Cantonese raw, that is the original language. So this provides an interesting case for people who are interested in translation or interpreting what happened there. However, in the annotated data, which is collected by us, we find the video and audio, which all included the translation, back translation of interesting in Cantonese and Putonghua. So in Cantonese definitely is 有趣, and Putonghua is 有意思. So that indicates the differences of use among the 2 spoken languages. But what is more interesting is why the data of, or the back translation of interesting was missing in the Cantonese raw and Putonghua raw. So as I mentioned, the SEPIC is free of charge, it's open access, but there are some terms of use. And if you cite any data from the SEPIC website, and there is a fixed format for you to use. And also it's licensed under Creative Commons. So if you need to do the search, just feel free to explore the search platform of the SEPIC. And if you have no idea how to do it, you can refer to the manual, which is accessible on the SEPIC website. Apart from that, you will also be able to look at the high frequency words of the entire SEPIC corpus and the sub data sets. And you may be able to find some high frequency words that you want to further explore in the corpus itself. So we believe that the SEPIC can be used by interpreters and translators as well as students in the following ways. It is a large database of high quality Chinese and English texts delivered by native politicians and interpreters and translators. So it can be used as reference of those language productions. Student interpreters or translators or professional translators and interpreters may be able to use the SEPIC to prepare translation and interpreting tasks and obtain some online support during translation and possibly interpreting. Of course, you need to have a partner in the booth to help you. The SEPIC can definitely be used by researchers in many aspects. They can use the SEPIC to study interpreted language, to compare translation with interpreting, and to study interpreting and political discourse at large. So here's a sample study of the traditional way of exploring the SEPIC in what I call the traditional CIS method. So in a previous study done together with my colleague, we looked into the usage of pragmatic markers in interpreted English versus native English in the SEPIC data. And we find some certain patterns, and also we extracted concordance lines and also looked into the position of the pragmatic markers. We believe that beyond academia, the SEPIC can be used in other ways as well. For example, at the SEPIC launch, some of my non-native speaker colleagues mentioned that they can actually use the SEPIC to learn Cantonese and Putonghua, which was quite an interesting exploration. We can also use the SEPIC to study politician language, definitely. We can use the SEPIC to study spoken language since it includes features such as fillers, pauses, etc. With such big amount of manually transcribed and annotated data, the SEPIC can be used for the exploration of semi-automatic language processing as far as transcription, POS tagging, and annotation are concerned. To stay updated and also to receive some future updates relevant to the corpus itself, we welcome you to join the SEPIC community. We have a Twitter account, a Facebook account, and also we have a Google site, which includes more recent updates relevant to the SEPIC. We also welcome your feedback and inquiries. So you can just scan the two QR codes to be able to see the Google site and also the feedback webpage. So just now I mentioned about the second item here, moving forward in corpus-based interpreting studies. Now I'd like to discuss, before we conclude, one of the possible directions for the future development of CIS, which is what might be called interpreting data mining. Since we're talking about data mining, let's look at the definition of data in interpreting studies. That leads us to the discussion of what is interpreting to start with. According to PoachHacker, interpreting is a form of translation in which a first and final rendition in another language is produced on the basis of a one-time presentation of an utterance in a source language. So we can see that interpreting happens in a one-time presentation, and it happens immediately. So how to capture data in interpreting studies? Normally, when we talk about data, we see interpreting data in a video format, in different language variations, or in a representation of sound waves. So this is the sound wave we actually is an app that we employed to transcribe the SEPIC data. And we also see the recording of interpreting data in different formats. For example, in one of the earliest publications on interpreting, Goldman-Eisler presented a parallel diagram of simultaneous interpreting data. So we have the source language in sound waves and the target language in sound waves. We also have the transcriptions above and below the sound waves. With that, we can study what we call the EVS, the ear voice span of simultaneous interpreting. So what happened to consecutive interpreting? In a more recent study, together with my student and also Michael Carr from Ghent State University, we started what we call the ear pan span in consecutive interpreting. And then we have the source speech, the sound wave of the source speech, and also the note taking. And the ear pan span refers to the time lag in between the time when the person listens to the original speech and also the time the student interpreter or the interpreter starts taking notes. And we can study the time duration and also the variation in a great and also their pattern in a large corpus. Data interpreting studies, especially again in consecutive interpreting, can include note-taking data. So again, in the same paper, we started note-taking, and our aim was to develop an annotation scheme on student consecutive interpreting note-taking. And if we have a possible scheme, annotation scheme, and then we can compare the results and also apply them to large-scale corpus. So this was some kind of exploration that we employed in the paper. So for instance, we have the source language, and then we divided the source language into different units, which is reflected in what we call the note-taking units. And then we compare the note-taking units to the student output to see whether the note-taking units are reflected in the output of the students in the end. Since we mentioned before, interpreting studies is actually outlooking in general, and also it is interdisciplinary in nature in many aspects. The study of data in interpreting studies can definitely benefit many different disciplines, including multilingual communication, spoken language features, natural language processing, language therapy, intercultural communication, the different subject areas covered by interpreting, such as the case of political interpreting, history itself, as well as technology, since interpreting has everything to do with technology. So what's the next from a wild cottage industry? Can we move forward to what we call industrial revolution from an industrial perspective? Then let's look at the features of industrial revolution. We have machines, machine tools, mechanized factory system, etc. So the next stage, if we move forward to industrial revolution within the field of CIS, machines will be one of the keywords that we will employ. So what to do? As a matter of fact, corpus-based interpreting studies has been and will continue to benefit from the development of technology. With the advancements of speech-to-text software development and also many other tools in the field of text mining and data mining, we will be able to present or construct interpreting corpus in a more semi-automatic way, and also to explore them in a more semi-automatic way as well. So here I'd like to use the SEPIC as an example as well. So this is the second version of the SEPIC that we're developing. We hope to be able to provide better alignment in between the audiovisual data, the source language, and the target language data. And we employed IBM transcription, automatic transcription tools to help us to do the transcription, and also we employ human helpers to help to check their outputs, to help align the text and also add the fillers. It was actually employed in the last two subdatabases of the SEPIC data. And we're still figuring out a possible way to fully employ them to a future collection of data. And the good point of it is that with the help of software such as ELAN, we will be able to annotate the data in a more systematic way and also record the time span in a more accurate way. So this may be a future platform you'll be able to see if we successfully develop this system to incorporate the SEPIC version 2 data. I talked about interpreting data mining earlier, so it's now time for us to look at the definition of data mining itself. So data mining refers to the process of discovering interesting patterns and knowledge from large amounts of data. So large amounts of data is the priority. It's also the prerequisite for us to do any kind of exploration. So as I mentioned, with large corpora, such as a SEPIC, then now we will have more and more training data, or we have more data to help to build on larger amounts of interpreting corpora for such kind of exploration in the future. A second feature is interesting patterns and knowledge. And I'd like to show again the application on the SEPIC data. For instance, we can use word clouds to show us the high frequency words in the different subsets of the SEPIC data. And then among the high frequency words, then we can also trace their usage, their interpreting and translation across different time span, as shown here. We can also look at the color case of certain keywords and also look at them in the different subsets of the SEPIC data. We can also look at how such kind of patterns change over time. What is more, we can also look into the possibility of sentimental analysis on large data sets. For instance, my student, Fernando Guevara Barrios, experimented on sentimental analysis with the SEPIC data. And one of the interesting findings that he presented is that among the different subsets of the SEPIC data, we find the Q&A sessions included more mixed feelings, more mixed attitudes as compared to the government reports itself, which are mostly positive. So the way forward, what should we do? For practitioners, definitely they need to have more text variety. So not just the political interpreting, we hope to be able to cover more types of interpreting. Practitioners will also hope to be able to have enhanced interface for better online support. And they would hope perhaps to have possible CAI, computer-assisted interpreting tools, to help them generate terminology and provide online interpreting support in the future. For researchers, we need bigger corpus, and we need more language combinations. So we may be able to discuss the possibilities to integrate similar corpora so that we will have more language combinations and also a bigger size corpora in the future. Apart from that, we also hope to be able to have better representation of multimodal data because as you can see, interpreting data is very, very complicated. It has different dimensions. How to record those different dimensions and also make them searchable will be a very daunting task for future generations of interpreting researchers, especially CIS researchers. For tool developers, we hope to be able to use existing corpora such as the SEPIC and EPIC, etc., to be able to develop from semi-automatic to automatic spoken data transcription tools. Also, we hope to be able to achieve, if possible, not just the semi-automatic, but also automatic data tagging and annotation on the spoken data. We hope to be able to have tools for better audio and video text data alignment. ELAN provides one of the possible solutions, but we hope to be able to have more choices in the future. Of course, we hope to be able to have better visualization of multilingual data in the future. In order to achieve what I mentioned earlier, we need collaboration not just among TNI researchers. We hope to be able to incorporate the perspectives from computational linguists to developers, computer programs, statisticians, etc. So I think that concludes my talk. I'd like to, again, before I conclude, show my appreciation to the founders of the projects. Without the funding, we won't be able to provide such a big size open access corpus. We also hope that, again, you can join the SEPIC community by scanning the QR code. And then you can follow us on our Twitter and Facebook so that you know some relevant events on corpus-based interpreting studies or just a SEPIC. Now I will welcome some questions and feedback from the audience. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dr. Pan, for your very interesting talk. It's definitely, I've learned a lot from this talk. I'm sure that lots of people might have some questions. So could I welcome anyone if you would like to ask any questions? So please just turn on your camera, or you can put up your hands, or you can type in your questions. Does anyone have any questions? So while we're waiting for the questions, so if you don't mind, I will ask one question first. So Dr. Pan, so it's a very exciting corpus, and I can see it could be very useful for interpreting studies. So I'm just wondering, is the corpus continuously to be updated? So if so, is it updated daily or monthly or yearly?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So this is what we are working on at the moment. So we're working on the second version of the corpus, which may be able to include the text, audio, visual data aligned. And we are also updating the corpus size to keep it updated. But we are not doing it on a daily basis, definitely, because it's also quite time-consuming. Especially we need to train people to learn the transcription rules and also the employment of the annotation scheme. So that takes time. So we hope to be able to get further funding to recruit people to work on the updating of the corpus. You're all welcome to join us. We're drafting the annotation, actually a manual for the annotation also, and also transcription rules we employed in the SEPIC data collection, so that for those who are interested in joining us, they can be able to apply what they learned from the project to their own corpus construction. So that is one of the purposes. But yes, definitely, we are updating the corpus size.
Yeah, I'm particularly interested in this multimodal data, when that could be potentially available.
We don't have a specific timeline at the moment, but definitely is some work we are working on. So if you want to learn about the official launching date of the multimodal version of the SEPIC, please do join us by checking the Twitter and also the Facebook updates. We will definitely announce it there.
Yeah, thank you very much. It seems to me maybe there's somebody else have questions instead of me asking questions all the time. Does anyone else have any questions?
Good morning, Saihong. Could I ask a couple of questions there?
Oh yes, of course. Could I? We don't know who is.
Taiwan.
Oh, okay. Hi. Hi.
Sorry about it. I think I'd better not turn on my camera there.
No problem at all.
Yeah. Right. Thank you very much indeed. I have a comment on the two layman's questions there. So first of all, thank you very much, Professor Pan. It's, as Saihong said, it's very exciting a project there. And especially, I think, sorry, first of all, a bit of information about me. I am teaching at the University of Westminster in London. So very interested in empirical research in translation and interpreting. So the lecture, the speech you gave today is really, as Saihong said, extremely exciting. Definitely for me. And also I think because the data now for corpora, I think more people are talking about corpora in European languages. So the fact that now your corpus is on English and Chinese, and I think that kind of language combination itself is extremely exciting, and I'm very sure lecturers and researchers like me will be very, very excited and look forward to accessing the corpus there. So thank you very much indeed for that. I have two layman's questions, as I said just now. First of all, it's extremely admirable that, you have a project. And it is really hard to imagine the time and the effort that you have already put in setting up this corpus. For example, I think, especially for me, I think sometimes when you transcribe the data itself, the time, and also the checking and so on and so forth, I just, all I can say is your project, what you have done, what you and your team have done is extremely admirable. So thank you very much indeed. So my question is, your corpus is free to access online. So could I ask, do you feel, sort of demotivated, for example, after you have invested so much time and effort setting up this corpus?
You mean demotivated because it's going to be used by other people?
Free of charge, I mean, yeah. Indeed.
Yeah.
Have you
Thanks for that.
considered, for example, when people access your corpus online, do you think, even a very small charge would somehow, justify the kind of investment that you have put in terms of time and so on and so forth?
Well, that is a very, very good question, because as you said, the development of the corpus itself takes a lot of time and a lot of resources, not just the human resources, but also the funding provided generously provided by the funders. But I learned much from the discipline of digital humanities, and also it's required by one of the funders that we have to make the corpus available and free of charge, even without registration. So this is one of the requirements. And of course, as developers, sometimes we are not like selfishness, right? We spend a lot of time, we want people to recognize it. So that's the reason why we kindly invite people to in order to show recognition, to cite the corpus when they use it. That's the only requirement we are asking for. On the other hand, it relates to the second point I mentioned in the presentation. So it's now time for us to have an outlooking perspective. An outlooking perspective means that we have to share with what we have constructed to let people know what has happened in this subdiscipline. So open access is one of the means for us to communicate our field or what we have found in this specific field to the outside world. So this is a necessary step we have to take, and somebody has to start doing it no matter what. So that's the reason why we decided to do it. A third reason, if I put it this way, is that I find that we have a lot of brilliant scholars in the field of interpreting studies, and in particular corpus-based interpreting studies. Each one of them, we have to develop a corpus starting from scratch. And after that, when they finish doing the research, then the corpus may just be left there. And it is a waste of time, because it is just because we spend so much time, we wish the corpus can be of more use. So that is the very, very important reason why we are so willing to share the corpus results. We have spent so much time. We don't want people to repeat what we have done. So we hope that people can make use of it. And that's the reason why it should be free of charge, so that people can save the time. They can focus on their research agenda. I illustrated some of the possible applications of the corpus from my own point of view, but one man's work is limited. So in order to move forward as a community, we need people to do the groundwork, such as constructing a corpus like this, so that other people can focus on their interested research agenda, so they can focus on what they are good at. So that's another very, very important reason, and we hope that we can provide at least some humble contribution in this aspect to save other people's time, to help them.
That's a true scholar's mind, isn't it? I actually, when I asked that question, when I was thinking of that question, I was actually thinking of the funder, the sponsor. I thought they might think, hang on, we've given you that much money to do this very important job. Can you give us some kind of, return? So I think as long as the sponsor requires that the corpus should be, freely accessible to researchers and lecturers, I think that is excellent. And thanks to the sponsor, actually.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also, you also raised the point just now when you were answering the question. I think, yes, as a researcher, we all have some data with us. It will be a waste if we just, leave, throw the bin the data. So if the data can be put somewhere for future use, whatever purposes, I think that'll be really, really good. So yeah, thank you very much. And my second small question is, because your corpus is open access, obviously, have you, got any kind of statistic about, the frequency of usage of your corpus so far?
We don't really trace that data, but we invite people who used any of the SEPIC data to report back to us. We hope to be able to, so that's the very purpose of constructing the SEPIC community. So we hope that anyone who publishes with the SEPIC data, it's like the free software usage. So if you use, say, for example, Wordsmith is not free, NCOM, then you report back to the developer, you have used the software, and then they will include the publication on their official website. So this is what we are planning to do as well. So we will include any publications using the SEPIC data on the SEPIC webpage. So we hope to be able to build a SEPIC community. And also in the future, we're talking about updating the corpus itself. So perhaps if without further funding, we still hope to be able to update the corpus. So we may hope other people can contribute to it. What they can gain is the protocols that we used will be shared with them so that they can use it to develop their own corpus. Of course, we hope that they can recognize it. So I think it takes some process. I mean, the idea of open access, starting from open access articles to open access resources in interpreting studies, that definitely takes some time, but we need to start to have somebody to start doing it. And actually, I discussed it with Maria Chiara Russo, who shared the same idea. So she's one of the developers of the EPIC data. So we shared the same opinion that we should share the data, and it should be accessed by people so that we can save a lot of efforts. And also, since corpus development is so time consuming, we should, in order to move forward as a discipline, we should collaborate and we should share.
Exactly,
so that's the reason why.
I totally agree, Pan. Thank you so much for
Thank you very much indeed.
And also thank you for Taiwan. Thank you very much for your comments. And I think without your sharing that generosity, we wouldn't know you here. So
yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Sharing, I guess. I do quite a few people wrote it down a couple of questions because we're running out of time very soon. They were both asking about, for example, what kind of speech transcription software you used, and also what kind of alignment software you use. I know you mentioned about ELAM. I didn't really get to what that is. So for example, lots of people, they are, especially PhD students, they are building their own corpus. And one of the key challenges they have is the alignment. So is that possible, for example, if it's some self-built corpus by the PhD students, they could upload their data to the platform and then can automatically be aligned?
Well, for that purpose, I recommend you to read Michael Carr's work, and we benefited from his advice as well. And so basically, we used IBM for automatic transcription, which worked very well with English and Putonghua, but not Cantonese.
IBM.
Yeah, IBM. And for alignment, ELAN provides a good alignment. So
LAN.
ELAN, yeah. Okay. ELAN provides a very nice tool for you to incorporate So basically, you can put the automatically transcribed data. You can input it to ELAN, and then they can be aligned with the audiovisual data. And the good point is that it can show the time span, and then the annotators can add the kind of, for example, feeders or pauses, such kind of annotations. If they want to add in the ELAN platform, is pretty easy to use. Yeah.
Are they both free softwares?
They are both free. For IBM, they start charging after certain amount of data transcription, but I think it's still affordable. Yeah.
Okay. Well, sorry, I've just summarized those questions from the
Thanks
chat.
a lot. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we just have 1 minute, so we're just welcoming the next speaker. I'm sure there are also other questions. Yes, there's another question they were asking about the copyright issues.
Yeah, so if you're using the SEPIC data, please do cite it. So there is a terms of use page, and if you use it, please do cite the corpus according to the format provided. Yeah, that's the only requirement.
Yeah. Okay, then thank you so much for Jun. Thank you. Oh, so is that? Yeah.
Actually, my question was about, during the process of compiling the corpus, are there any copyright issues involved? Thank you. If you have time.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So we consulted our library. So if we only provide segments, like the results you see now, you only have little segments, so there is no copyright issues. And also, we cited the original resources. If you check the SEPIC website, each of the segment has a link to the original source.
Okay. That covers both the text and audio and video. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to pull to the end of the paragraph to be able to find the links.
So the limit about the segment, the length, are there any
limitations?
Could I? Sorry to stop you there. Could I ask Professor Pan? Would you mind to type in the answers, because the second speaker is already here?
Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, I do apologize. So once again, I want to thank to Professor Jun PAN for your excellent talk. It's been very inspiring. So I definitely will give it another go, and I'll keep you posted how I work on it.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks again for your generosity for sharing the corpus, and also for your wonderful talk today.